What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I'm really happy you guys made it to this new video. So these past few weeks, I've been really trying to come out with some more interesting video ideas, and I thought that today would be a great time to showcase this. So I've been teaching my friend Yusuke, who's behind the camera right now. He's been trying to fly FPV these past few weeks, past few months, and he's been improving a lot actually. He's been doing the simulator, and also I let him use my Diatone Roma F5 5-inch drone with my old V2 goggles. And he also has a cool crossfire setup with the TX16S. And I thought that would be a really great opportunity to make a video about the difference between a pro pilot versus a beginner pilot.
Oh shit.
So when I originally set out to make this video, I was gonna make it into one of those clickbaity, like beginner versus pro battle type videos where it's really focused on the footage between the footage I got and the footage Yusuke got. But the more I thought about this video and the kind of purpose I want to accomplish with this video, I realized that I feel like I could provide way more value to you guys, that I make a video that's more focused on the mindsets between a pro pilot versus beginner pilot and less as a comparison really between our footage. Because that would be kind of like comparing like a professional soccer player like Messi to like a high school freshman soccer player. Like there's just not really much of a point and doesn't really make any sense or provide any value. So that's why I want to sit down here and really talk about more into the mindsets and kind of philosophies and difference in thinking between a pro pilot versus a beginner pilot. So right now we're going to get into 3 different ways that pro pilots think differently than beginner pilots. So let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about, which may seem pretty basic and pretty unimportant, but I think it's actually one of the most important things, is launching and landing. And I think a lot of beginners really kind of gloss over this because with beginners, they usually have experience flying Mavics, which literally are super easy to land. You know, you just bring it here, it hovers, and you just bring it down like that, super easy. And then also a lot of beginners start in the simulator, so they just fly around in the simulator having fun. And the simulator is also really not that realistic. So when you're launching and landing, it's not really a reflectance on real life. Like the physics are pretty different in simulators, honestly. Like simulators are great for kind of getting the hang of flying around, really trying to understand the controllers. But when it comes down to landing and launching, landing especially, it just does not translate to real life. So I think that's a huge difference between beginners and pro pilots, because beginners, sure, they might be able to hover around, fly around, but when it comes to landing and launching, it's just a complete nightmare. And as you can see in this example, my friend actually almost cut himself when he launched. And I think it's really easy to forget like how powerful these drones are. I mean, when you look at them, it's literally like a flying blender. Imagine like a blender with 4 blades flying in the air, and that's what it is. Sometimes it's easy to forget, but you really don't want these coming anywhere near close to your skin, especially your head. So as you can see in this clip, my friend took off and he's not really aware that the wind will affect it. So it launches up, the wind pushes it, and almost actually cuts like right here by his neck. So that's actually extremely dangerous. So you definitely want to practice launching and landing when you're starting off. Like, don't get too caught up in just flying around, getting 6 shots right away. Like really just get the basics down. Like when I first started off, I kind of knew that it would be hard. So I would launch, you know, and then when I would land, I'd really just try to focus, calm myself down, and really just try to hover as low as you can. And then right when you get above that pad, just boom, disarm it and you're good. So learning how to properly launch and land is extremely important. And I think it's also really important if you do want to start getting paid for this, because sure, like if you're a beginner, you might be able to get some decent shots with FPV, but when it comes to client perception, it's just really not a good look when you're trying to land and you just like completely land in the grass like 10 feet away, when you're just not really being safe around set, because landing and launching are the most dangerous times I think when you're flying, because obviously when you're flying, you're hitting gaps out there, but it's all pretty controlled. But when you're landing, you're next to people, you're getting close to you, next to around all your equipment. Like it's just really important to be able to land precisely and safely. And it's definitely gonna help you out a long way when you're doing it on set, because when you're able to launch and land very precisely on your little pad, it just really kind of gives that impression that you know what you're doing, you're a safe pilot, and that the client is getting their money's worth for the amount of money they paid you. So I think that's enough to say about that, but definitely very important. If you guys are beginners out there, really just take a few days, just practice landing and launching. Every time you fly, really just focus on landing and launching. Maybe just dedicate a few batteries to just landing, launching, hovering, doing controlled hovers, and just really getting to know your drone and how to control it properly. That's gonna be really important for you guys. All right, guys, let's do it. Another difference between experts and beginners are usually beginners will just kind of take off and just send it and go super far right away. But when you're flying more expensive rigs, it's really important to just like that first few seconds of the flight, just to stay nearby, don't fly around too far. And it just serves as kind of like a double check just to make sure all your gear is okay, everything's all good, your battery is well strapped, and just that everything's in working order before you really send it. So that's another difference between beginners and pros. All right, guys, so moving on to number 2 on this list, I really want to discuss the differences between pro pilots and beginner pilots and how they really understand the nuances of FPV. And what I mean by that is with FPV drones, like there's just so much knowledge to know and there's just so much stuff to handle when you're on set and when you're just flying, honestly, because when compared to other types of filmmaking, for example, let's say you're like a gimbal camera operator, just a traditional filmmaker, handheld filmmaker, whatever, and someone pays you to show up on set, like let's say your gimbal breaks or your tripod breaks, something like that, like you could still deliver good footage. You could still just go handheld. You could still just put the camera on a tripod, another tripod or whatever. Like you could still deliver good footage. But with drone filmmaking, like your essence of being a drone pilot is by being able to launch the camera into the sky and get those aerial views. And when you're going into the air, when you're going airborne, that really introduces a lot of complications. Like I'm sure you guys know, like airplanes, helicopters, drones are all pretty sophisticated machines, honestly. Like they need to be in good working condition. Like if any one thing goes wrong, you won't be able to launch. Like for example, one time I did a shoot and I told this guy I knew how to fly FPV and I haven't flown my Cinewhoop for a while. It was like a month or two. I showed up and then my drone literally didn't even arm, and it was like super embarrassing. I was like, what the heck? Like I mistakenly assumed that, oh yeah, my drone should be fine, Like you can never really assume anything with drones, like you really got to test them out, especially with FPV because they're so intricate and stuff. Like your whole essence of a drone pilot is by being able to go aerial. So with that, there's just so many different nuances. For example, you have to understand batteries, how to charge them. You have to understand how to solder, how to fix motors, how to use Betaflight, how to map the controllers, how to set up your TBS Crossfire, how to solder that onto the drone, how to change motors, how to change props, how to adjust camera angle, how to set up the GoPros, how to use Hypersmooth, Real Steady. There's just so many different things that come with being an FPV pilot, and I think that's why it's kind of cool because you're able to charge more. Because with other types of filmmaking, like of course, like being a gimbal operator, it requires a lot of skill and there's definitely levels to it. But with FPV, it's just a whole nother level of knowledge and intricacy. And that's why it's kind of cool because we're able to charge that into our day rate. Because let's be honest, the average person cannot fly FPV. Like even people that are amazing at flying Mavics, even amazing at flying Inspires, whatever, you can't really just transition that skill to flying FPV. Like it's definitely a very nuanced skill that requires a lot of hours and a lot of time to understand. So I think that's a huge difference between beginners and pros, because beginners, they might have their rig, they might have their goggles, they have their little bind and fly drone, they have their batteries, they know how to charge them and stuff, and they just go fly around, but they don't necessarily understand how to maintain that drone. They won't really be able to understand how to fix it if anything goes wrong. They won't really be able to change their control system. Like let's say I want to say, oh, switch your control system from TBS Crossfire to ELRS. A beginner would not know how to do that, a pro can. So these are just small examples of really the differences in mindset between a beginner and a pro pilot, which I think is very important. So if you're a beginner, highly suggest to just start learning more, watch Joshua Bardwell videos, try to learn more about your drone, how to troubleshoot it if anything goes wrong, and just always be trying to learn more. So that's gonna be really important from going from a beginner to a pro pilot. All right guys, so now on to the third and final reason of what makes a pro pilot versus a beginner pilot different is going to be pro pilots are driven. And this third point is kind of going to be related to my last point, but a little bit different. But I think the biggest differences between a pro pilot versus beginner pilot is a pro pilot is driven and they're very hungry to just get really good shots and to just always expand their reel, expand their body of work, expand their knowledge of FPV. And I think that I'm a great example because I'm the type of person where I'm always trying to look for new spots, you know, like I don't like to get complacent, you know, like I don't like to just fly FPV all the time at the park. I don't like to always go to the same spots because let's be honest, like it gets really stale just always flying at the same places, getting the same shots. Like I always want to try to push my boundaries and try to get better shots. So for example, I'm always driving around the Bay Area. I'm always trying to look for new spots. Like for example, just last weekend, I went out to Sausalito. I was just there chilling, didn't bring any of my drones, but I'm always just on the lookout, looking for new spots. And I found this really sick spot by these docks, which I really want to fly next. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, a pro pilot is always just looking for the next spot, looking for the next amazing sunset. They're always just searching for that next amazing spot. Because let's be honest, as FPV pilots, I don't know about you guys, but taking my drone to a brand new spot that I've never been to at sunset is like just such a great feeling. Like you can't really describe it. Like it feels so fun to go to a new spot. I got that feeling in one of my previous videos, like San Pedro Point, or any of those times I was traveling, like in the Philippines. Like just nothing beats that feeling of being in a new location with the drone, never been there, because the drone just allows you to just see a whole nother perspective that you're not used to. And I just love getting those shots because at heart, I am a cinematographer. I just love video. I love to get shots. So I'm always just trying to get those next shots that are really just gonna help propel my career and just push me forward and just release new videos for you guys. And another point I wanna talk about is pro pilots are always trying to push themselves in their knowledge of drones and different types of rigs. Like, for example, when I first started off, I started off with like a little 4-inch drone from iFlight. Then I got some 5 inches, I broke those, I tried to fix them. Then I got a Cinewhoop. Then I got my 7-inch finally. So it really took me a while to really try to understand the differences between the drones. I also built a 2.5 inch with my friend. And with each of these different builds and each of these different drones, you really get to learn more about what the differences between these different rigs are, because every drone has a different purpose. They fly differently, they have different flight times, they have different flight characteristics. So it's really important to get to know as many rigs as you can so you know which drone is the best for the job when the time comes. Like beginner pilots, they typically just get really comfortable with just one type of drone, you know? They might just have one 5-inch drone or just one like Avata or just one Cinewhoop, and that's about it. And they just fly that at the park all the time. But a pro pilot is always hungry for trying out new rigs, trying to learn more about drones. For example, right now, I've been flying the 7-inch for the past few months, and I'm really starting to get to understand that drone, really starting to understand the nuances, really starting to like that drone. And next, I want to move on to a Cinelifter finally, like maybe an X8, 8-inch or a 9-inch drone, and I'm going to put my Komodo on there finally, or maybe even the ZVE one right here. But yeah, that's just kind of an example of the mind of a pro pilot, just always thinking about what's the next drone, how am I going to learn, you know? For example, I also want to learn how to finally do a naked GoPro Hero 11. I think that would be really awesome because I do a lot of real estate work, and by having a naked GoPro, I'm able to put it on the 2.5 inch and just fly around super quietly, super nimbly around indoor spaces. And I think that that would be a great rig to take to the city because it's just so low key. I could legit fly around wherever I want. I could dive building. It's just so small, so lightweight, so harmless. So I think that that would be a great rig because I'm still able to get that amazing image quality from the GoPro Hero 11, but just having that much smaller footprint is gonna be awesome because it's just gonna allow me to be like one of those guerrilla filmmakers, like Vegan FPV. He flies around like in New York City, like at the subway station. He flies in some really cool places. Or kind of like Bot Grinder flying around in like a Target. Like who knows, I might do that, you know? Like, but having a small little rig like that is absolutely awesome. So that's just kind of where my head is right now. Like the more you get to know these drones, the more possibilities and shots you're able to see. So that's why it's just so important to experiment with different rigs and just always push yourself to learn more about drones. All right guys, so one last kind of topic I want to talk about before we head out here. And I know I kind of talk about this a lot, but it's actually really important. Like today, when I was thinking about this video, I was like, okay, where's the best place we could do this? You know, like for me, it's not inspiring to always fly at the same places, go to the park, because like, I just feel like that's not what this channel is about. And that's not really what I think FPV filmmaking is all about. Like FPV is all about really expanding your mind, expanding your horizons to what kind of shots we can get with cameras. And like flying around at this bridge here, like it's so much fun, you know, like even though it's just a bridge, you know, it's not like I'm not chasing like a crazy car, I'm not doing all this crazy stuff, but it's honestly just really good practice. And it really just makes me feel excited about FPV. Like I just did 3 flights there and that was so much freaking fun, you know, like it was just so fun to really kind of think outside of the box into what kind of shots I could get. Like for example, when I first started flying, I was just doing kind of like the basic gap just directly under the bridge, consistently through those squares, you know, those rectangles. But the more I flew, I was like, that's probably kind of boring, just going straight through the bridge. And that's when I really started to expand my horizon. And I thought like, oh, I could do some really cool like S's around these columns here. I could play off these gaps. I could really just like kind of mix it up. And I honestly think that those shots are going to turn out way better. And another thing I want to talk about is like, I feel like a more experienced drone pilot really knows the tool for the job. Like when it comes down to it, all drones are just different tools, you know, like that's why drone pilots have a lot of different drones, because each one serves a different purpose. And that's why I've been having so much fun really mastering the 7-inch FPV these past few months here. And today was just another great example as to why I love the 7-inch, because I was able to not only get extremely awesome shots from this side of the bridge all the way to the other side of the bridge, I was also able to really push the range. And I actually flew probably like a whole mile, 2 miles, maybe even 3 miles, all the way down there to those marshes. And right when the sun was dipping down, those shots turned out absolutely amazing. I really hope the exposure is going to look good on the GoPro later, but I was really happy with how that shot even just looked on the goggles. I mean, it looked legit like planet Earth, you know, like I was hearing David Attenborough like narrating over my mind when I was flying through that. Like it just looked so awesome with the pink sunset, orange colors. And yeah, the 7-inch just performed so awesome because I flew all the way over there, didn't have to worry about my battery life, wasn't worried about my range. I had a full 50 megabytes, had a full connection on my RC as well. So yeah, that was so much fun. And that's why a more experienced drone pilot really has more experience with different rigs. So that's why it took me a while to finally find the 7-inch. You know, I flew 5 inches, I flew Cinewhoops, you know, I fly Mavics, but at the end of the day, like my preferred filmmaking platform right now is the 7-inch with the GoPro. I mean, you can't beat it. Looked absolutely awesome. And one last thing I want to talk about is that it's really important to use the same batteries. Like the main batteries I use are the GepRC Storm 6S 3300 mAh LiPo batteries, and I really like those just because I love the power to the weight ratio. Just feels really good and natural, really good momentum. But actually I also bought these other cheaper all-line batteries when I went to the Philippines, and it's good, you know, just having a whim just to get some more flights in. But when I'm so used to flying on a certain rig, like that first battery, the 3300 mAh, like I'm just so used to the weight and how it feels, how it responds to wind, how it responds to gaps and the throttle, that when I switched over to that second battery for my third flight, like I wasn't that confident because the drone felt a lot lighter because it's a lighter battery obviously. And like I just felt kind of less confident, like I was floating around in the wind too much. I wasn't able to feel like that nice gravity, that nice weight to the line. But yeah, I think it's really important to stick with the same batteries. So after today, I'm definitely going to order more of those GepRC 3300 mAh batteries because they're just so clutch, you know, great flight time. But yeah, I just want to mention that because that could kind of throw you off. Like for that third battery there, I was kind of worried I was going to crash, you know, because like I'm just not used to it. Like my muscle memory is off. I'm not going to be accurate, and especially when you're flying in an environment like this where there's a lot of gaps, that's super important. So definitely recommend flying with the same batteries. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.